Hello, and welcome back to Avenue's 12 Step Workshop for Alumni. We do this every Wednesday, and we're winding down on our second season doing this. Tonight, we're on steps 10 and 11. A few announcements. If anyone's in immediate need of our help tonight, feel free to call our 1-800 number there or reach out to alumni coordinator or outreach. If it's an emergency, please dial 911. Quick update, Daily Hammock Readings is growing. If you haven't checked it out, please do. It's a nice way to start the day or take a break and go on Avenue's Facebook or YouTube. You can find them on Twitter, or we can email them to you if you want to subscribe to them. They're 1 to 3 minute videos with a meditation, a prayer, a reading, a poem, something to re-anchor us, to bring us back in the moment and acknowledge that we want to be present. We share it as a community. If you want to offer any ideas for the next season, please email me. Or if you have any questions that we may not get to tonight, or for support in working the steps, please email me. And I usually get back to you within a week. That's always the goal. Let's review where we have been so far through steps 1 and 10, 1 through 9, essentially. Steps 1, quick review. We're admitting to substance use disorder. Regardless of what support community you join, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Dharma Recovery, even Smart Recovery, you're admitting that you have a fatal and progressive illness, and you're floating this idea of step 2 too. That's you're taking from the position, I might be insane. I might not know true from false when it comes to the consequences of my drinking or drug use, or I don't care anymore. And I'm going to have to make a turn. Do I want to accept help? And is that help the same kind of help someone else had, that I could trust them? Did they recover from their situation? Step 3 is a little further. I'm going to commit to the community, be it AA or NA. I could do this in the form, historically in AA. You see the 3rd step prayer. I may take this with someone else, a sponsor, a friend. I may say it as an oath, like I did. It was very secular. It was hard for me to understand that. I also said the prayer just to do the formality of reading it. I wanted the intention. I wanted to be released of self. At the 3rd step, we're also transitioning from talking about use and ritual of the actual addiction to now identifying something in our personality that happens to us sober, that returns us to active use. And we're going to call these 4 things character defects and keep them real simple: selfishness, resentment, dishonesty, and fear. 3rd step lets me confront the first, selfishness. Where is this idea of self? Why am I consumed with this inner dialogue? It's almost to a point of detachment, that I'm not connecting with people. And my pain and self-pity has just run riot over me. Even in my gracious moments, am I operating out of self-interest? We're starting to challenge ourselves. Maybe I can't fix myself. Maybe this trust in another person could lead me to an action. And you completed step 3 when you start writing step 4. That means you've done it. You're going further. We talked about many ways you could write a 4th step. Traditionally, from Alcoholics Anonymous, NA, workbooks, Hazelton forms, Russell Brand's book, really simple format. You make that decision with you and your sponsor, and you move forward, and you make the effort, and you start writing down what this life looks like in the narrative of resentments, to refeel this unreconciled life, and fear and harms. You do a 5th step, and we saw we could do that multiple ways with a sponsor. We might need a therapist or have a clinician in our lives at this point if we suffered from serious trauma, PTSD. That's not out of the picture. You could do it with a religious support. That'll be up to you. But the point is to finish it accurately, because we saw this warning in all of these communities of 2 moments where they're pretty sure we're going to be headed back to active use. It's if we skip the 5th step and what we'll talk about tonight, fail to enlarge our spiritual life. So the sixth step we saw was an introduction to step 11, which we'll talk about tonight. That was an hour of reflection, meditation. What did we just do in these 5 steps? What is waking up in me? What voice is dominating my cognitive life? Is it filled with resentment? Am I still a victim of this horrible situation I used to call life? I end that and conclude it with that I can resolve. The past is not happening anymore. I want to move forward, being aware of how fear just crops up and rises up in me, and resentment. And that's the commitment in step 7. Step 8 lets us double check our 4th step. Did we miss anyone? Did we miss a harm that maybe we didn't resent? It gives us another chance to look at this, make a plan, and not make it by ourselves. We could do it with a sponsor. So at this point, we might want to even, if you have legal troubles, a lawyer, an accountant, financial services, start making a plan of how I can start the easy amends and not make them about me, make them really about change. Can I change this relationship? Can I pay this moral debt? Tonight, we're at step 10, and step 10, and if you want to be, mathematically metaphysical, it's 1 through 9. We've learned how to work step 10 over the months and weeks. For some of us, it could be a year or two to understand the mechanics of these steps. Step 10 represents this entire process, 1 through 9, at a daily level, and it becomes a discipline of thinking. Am I uncomfortable? Is something wrong at work, at home? First question, can it be my fault? And not a morbid question of that. Am I considering others? Do I want something that I'm not getting? And we can challenge this in step 10. Strangely enough, like in the 80s, some weird habit came up that we do step 10 at every rehab. Well, it's not really step 10. It just kind of became that ritual in the group format. That's Alcoholics Anonymous suggestion for easy meditation. It's step 11 in the big book, and it starts on page 86 and 85. It says, now we're at step 11. And, we're going to make a couple quick, broad pieces of advice. AA says at night, we review our day. Were we selfish? We look for these ideas that we're calling defects. Did I pack something into the stream of life? So you got in that discipline at every Avenues facility. It's kind of our ritual to do that. And I haven't met anyone, I've been around Alcoholics Anonymous since 1994, that relapsed reading page 86 every night and sincerely trying to make an attempt. Am I conscious? Am I living an intentional life free from the torment of addiction? An addiction, that kind of relapse, we know, starts with thinking. Doesn't start with drinking. Step 10 lets us be the safeguard for that. And step 11, suggesting we practice meditation or a form of prayer twice a day. And then on the morning, we could plan our day. We want to be divorced from self-pity and fear, because that's my natural state. For me personally, it's the mind of trauma. I look for these things. I want to give up. I want to be able to think there's powers pushing against me. I am powerless against this situation. And now that we're having an awakening, and that was hard for me to wrap my hands around because I was secular. I thought I was doomed if I was going to have to believe something supernatural was to save me after being told I had a medical disorder. This practice came out to me and showed me through Alcoholics Anonymous started it. I ventured into refuge and Dharma recovery literature to have some more support of how I would practice this. But it was my own experience. And I kept pursuing it, and I continue to, because I don't want to fall back asleep. Without step 11 and 10, my thinking changes. And tonight we have a great guest. She had a very, very exciting day and busy day in Maryland. Melissa August is our guest. She's the outreach coordinator in Avenues, Maryland. Missy has been there the last 3 years. They had a ribbon cutting today. And she's graced us with some time to come on and speak to steps 10 and 11. Melissa, thanks for coming. The mic is yours.
All right. Well, thank you for that intro. Yeah, that was a great intro. I feel like I don't know if I can top that. I forgot to ask you before the meeting, is the the profanity rule for this meeting? I don't know.
You get 3 curse words. After
Okay.
that, we start to measure your sobriety. So you
Okay.
get 3 shits and 1 F-bomb.
Okay. Yeah, so my name's Missy. I am definitely an alcoholic and an addict, and I've been coming to 12-step fellowship for about 7-8 years now. I've been abstinent since July 17th, 2015. So coming up on 7 years, but I definitely didn't get it right away. It took me many bottoms and falling through those bottoms to get that, gift of desperation that we talk about a lot. And, Joe was talking about being an atheist, and I never really identified with atheism, but I definitely identify as an agnostic. And the kind of like stems into a lot of parts of my life too. Kind of just, I guess you could call it a character defect, but just kind of being indecisive and skeptical. And, that's kind of how I was about this program when people were telling me about the program and that I need the program. And I started going to meetings, but I would sit in the meetings and I would, look at the steps, and I just couldn't really understand how that was. I guess it was just like another language to me. And yeah, so being an agnostic, just, it means a lot of things for me. And I can honestly say, like, at this point in my recovery, in my journey, I've finally really been able to like dig into that a little more and what that means for me and what is my spirituality, and exploring all of my options, and trying different things and getting creative with my rituals around steps 10 and 11. So, but yeah, going back to, when I first came in here, I definitely looked at the steps, and I looked at people in the meetings, and I just assumed that, like, a lot of things in my life, this wasn't going to work for me. And really, that was just my inability to give up control. And as people say, like, I just wasn't ready. And I can see that now looking back. I wasn't tired enough. I really just wasn't willing to give up that control. And yeah, I think that, my last month out using and drinking, I, experienced a spiritual bottom. And, that was something that I hadn't experienced before. And just coming to a realization that I was empty inside. I was completely broken. And the solution that I had, which was drinking and using, it wasn't working. And I became suicidal. So the only other option was suicide. And so, it definitely had stopped working. But yeah, the spiritual bottom for me was what hurt the most, because physically I had no place to live. My physical health was not well. Mentally, I was depressed. I was irritable. I went from 0 to 100 every time. I didn't really even enjoy, the substances anymore. But spiritually, I was in a hospital, and I was alone with myself. And there's no way of getting out of this particular hospital. And I had to sit with myself and And for me, that was the best thing that could have ever happened. And yeah, so I guess I definitely want to talk about more of the spiritual aspects of the program and my experience with 10 and 11. And, you know, I think it's hard. It feels weird to just jump right into step 10 because I'm, without talking about all the other steps. But I guess the big thing is, you know, I got a sponsor right away. And the first time I did the steps is she sat me down with a big book and we read the appendix and we read the cover page. And I'm just sitting here with this woman thinking, like, what is the purpose of this? Why do I need to do this? And still, you know, still to this day, I have that big book with all of my notes in the columns. And, you know, she taught me about the history of the fellowship. She taught me about, you know, the importance of a group conscience and a local home group and all of those things. But so we worked the steps by reading the book and doing it, you know, the big book style. And I was doing the work because I had that gift of desperation. I was doing a lot of writing, did my 4th step, felt good, shared it with my sponsor, got to 6 and 7. I started feeling good. I started realizing, you know, these are the things that I have that I need to work on. These are my, you know, I don't like using the word defects, but yeah, these are my weaknesses and these are my strengths. And let's just put it all out on the table. And then 8 and 9, very rewarding. I definitely took my time with that. And still to this day, you know, there are some amends that, you know, I haven't made, but, you know, I will when the time is right, when I know the time is right. And then something for me, and they talk about this in the big book, in the literature, something for me happened between steps 9 and 10 that was really cool and really special. And I don't think I realized it until, you know, after it happened. And it's in the back of the book, this one reading, I think it's called The Spiritual Experience or something. And yeah, it talks about that, you know, and this is very true for my story. There are these big moments where I have, you know, like when I was in that hospital and I had this white light go off and, you know, I felt a burning desire to do a first step in that hospital on the floor. And then there's moments in recovery that are like, you can't like put a pin on it. Like the personality change that happened for me between steps 9 and 10 was just very profound. And it happened gradually and it happened slowly. This wasn't like a week. This was like over several months. I can remember meeting with my sponsor one day and just, you know, we got together to talk about step 10 and what working step 10 means. And she said, I'm ready to sponsor other women. And I just remember going through my day and walking into a room and not obsessing over what everyone was thinking about me, going to a meeting and not obsessing over what I was going to share or just that garbage in my head that's always, you know, that reel of negative self-talk. It just started getting quieter and quieter and quieter. And it was just really profound for me because I think in order for me to actually do a step 10 in the way that, you know, practicing the other steps on a daily basis, it was really important that I was able to get to that point and have that clarity with who I am. And, you know, because it's like 4 and 5 gets rid of a lot of junk. And then 8 and 9 gets rid of a lot of guilt and shame. And then coming into step 10, I like to refer to it as my 1 day at a time step. And I guess for me, when I got to step 10, it was really just 1 day at a time. it sounds so silly because I don't think I really even fully understood one day at a time until like I got to step 10 and realized that, um, you know, this is, um, it's just really valuable in so many ways. So I guess the way my sponsor explained it to me is, you know, the first time we started practicing it was just a daily inventory, and just basically journaling about my day. Was I dishonest? Was I resentful? Doing like a daily inventory, and then I could also incorporate, you know, any of my defects that came up, any of my strengths or weaknesses that came up. And it was just like a little questionnaire that I did every day. But then there's this other cool thing, um, that, and I think Joe was kind of talking about it a little in the beginning. It almost becomes unconscious, like an unconscious reaction. And it's like a spot check inventory. And it, it really, it really happens without me even thinking about it. Um, and I just want to say, like, I don't do any of this perfectly. But these are just, you know, things that were passed down to me that I really value. Um, I still, am human, and, you know, I still get angry, resentful, lie, steal. But the spot check inventory is just, um, you know, when I'm having one of those days where I'm just not spiritually fit, where, um, and there's a great speaker in AA that talks about, the spiritual axiom. And the only way that I can understand it is now that after I've had children, um, is like there's days where being with my children is like the most beautiful thing. You know, I just love their perfect little faces, their perfect little noses. I love their laugh, and all is well. And then there's days where my children are behaving exactly like they were the day before, but everything is irritating me. They're too loud, they're too needy, they're too this. And that is how I understand, like, I'm in need of, you know, either doing that daily spot inventory or just in general, like I need some um I need some me time, and that's, you know, time to reflect and time to practice my spiritual rituals, which, um, is basically brings me right into step 11. Um, and for me, those spiritual rituals are, you know, a lot of, you know, it's nothing unique. It's not something that I just made up. Like I said, I did a lot of, you know, seeking to understand where I fit as an agnostic, as somebody who, you know, really believes in, um, a higher level, a higher being, Mother Earth, Mother Nature, but is really, really uncomfortable with the idea of, um, you know, God as we know it in organized religion. And, you know, it's just been an amazing experience. But so for me, prayer is a huge part of it. And, another part of my ritual is definitely meditation. Again, I'm not like a very skilled meditator. What I do is I find time to preferably sit outside, you know, preferably at a park somewhere very, natural. I would even go for a walk and just like walk into the middle of the woods until I can't see, no sign, no signs of any other human life, and, just sit quietly and listen. And that's my ideal, like spiritual recharge. My ideal step 11, um, and prayer is a part of it too. So I don't. I will tell you this: my prayers have the form of my prayers have changed so much over the past 6.5 years, or almost 7 years, and you know, if you struggle with the idea of God or a higher power or, whatever it might be, like there is no wrong way to do this. Like there really isn't. You know, taking time to be alone and to reflect and to work on yourself, there's no wrong way to do that. And when I was in that hospital and I had that gift of desperation, I got on my knees and I just like my body just I just went to my knees and I started praying to my dead grandmother. And I would every night, like multiple times a day, I would just say, please help me, please help me. Like, I know you're there. I know, like, it was just so natural because that was my idea of something. That was my idea of a God that I could understand, Um, and so over time, I still think about her, and every now and then I will pray to her, but it's really when I pray, even if I don't really know what I'm praying to, I still know that I'm like, it's for me. It's for me to find peace with my troubles. It's for me to find peace with people that I'm worried about, um, people in my life that might be sick. It's for me to do a gratitude list. Like a lot of the times when I'm praying, and I just say, thank you for keeping me sober today. It's just for me to remember that I do have a lot to be grateful for. Um, so I say all of that. I was telling Joe, sometimes I feel like self-conscious about talking about, being agnostic, but I know that there's people that probably need to hear it. And for me, it has been a struggle trying to figure out what kind of rituals, what kinds of practices are going to keep me spiritually charged and keep me spiritually connected. And, I'm still figuring the rest out. I'm still figuring out pretty much everything in my life, but that is, my experience today with 10 and 11. And I just want to say again that I definitely don't do any of this perfectly. I, the last 6 years has been amazing. And I've really, truly not until recently have been able to really do more work on myself and inner work, I guess I should say. So it's very fitting to be able to share about step 10 and 11 because it's so important to remember. And step 10 helps me remember this, is that spiritual axiom, like when I'm angry, when I'm irritated, when I am upset, when I am sad, it's really my problem to take care of that disturbance because I'm the one that's disturbed. So it's affecting me. And it doesn't mean that the person who hurt my feelings isn't wrong, but I'm responsible for my own disturbance. That other person is not responsible for my disturbance. So it's a really good reminder for me. And especially what Joe was talking about in the beginning of just that my go-to just being, fear driven and fear-based decision making, being able to, have that self-awareness, I guess, on a deeper level. And I've always really thought, it's cool how, I go to therapy and a lot of therapists recommend cognitive behavioral therapy. And I just find it really cool that those two, like the step 10 and the best way to get results, I think, for me at least, is to be consistent. And that's like exactly how I've had therapists explain like cognitive behavioral therapy to me, and how it's really important to be consistent to get the results. But I'm an alcoholic and an addict, and I don't want to be consistent. That sounds boring. And I want to be spontaneous and always be switching it up. So finding the willingness to do stuff on a consistent basis is one of my defects, I guess. But yeah, I think I'll stop there and pass it back over. I don't want to start rambling too much.
You weren't rambling.
Okay.
I want to thank you. It is strange to openly talk about a practice that's so private. It could feel so private for so many. And I guess, I go to enough meetings around people that talk about it so openly, you forget you're even doing it. And I related deeply to many things that you said, especially agnostic or atheist. I mean, we tend to forget our own history, especially in 12-step groups, that they dedicated an entire chapter to people like yourself and me. That's a lot of real estate in a book for 164 pages. Why would that's not accidental? And I think it's the mind of an alcoholic or a person who's prone to addiction, suffers from it. There's prior conditions to that let us not feel safe or become cynical, see the bullshit in the world, or whatever that scenario is. AA made a home for us. That it's not what we believe, it's what we do. And we can all practice the steps the same way. My sponsor was kind of a fundamental Christian. And after I got to know him and he knew me, our relationship was built on care and love, and it was never an issue. We both don't want to die of alcoholism. And that's the beautiful tolerance of 12-step life. It's not what God is, it's how are you going to wake up to your voice, your spirituality. And I like AA really nailed it when they said we all find it kind of in the same place. This great reality is within us. A new voice wakes up around step 6 and 10, and you described it. And I was in a hospital and I was desperate too. I know that description. There's something beautiful about step 11. You go back to that. You went back to it 10 minutes ago. And what that means to us, we got a second chance. Not many people get to tap into that any part of the day. You called it a spot check inventory, but it's also this weird marriage and dance to the fact that I shouldn't be alive. I do feel lucky. And it's more than luck. I owe a debt to other people that are suffering from this problem because someone pulled me out of that hospital, spent a lot of time with me when I wasn't fun to be around. I was kind of a drag. I was toxic, angry. I'd be desperate one moment for help. The other, I'm just angry. I had to have your help. It's a tough place to be at. You covered step 10 and 11 beautifully, and I relate deeply, and we all relate in our own way. And we talk a lot about meditation, and AA suggestions are like kind of kindergarten suggestions, and we could explore that. I think part of my spiritual awakening needs to be fed with stuff I don't understand. Reading new ideas, tolerating other people's views and point of views. When I'm just starting at a meeting, I already got practice of that. I listened to everyone for an hour. I started listening more deeply. It calmed me. That's meditative. Walking's meditative. Yoga, physical. And then I started to use apps and guided meditations. And the profound effect practicing step 11 had on me, it saved my marriage. It saved my mind. It reduced my anxiety, my depression. I started living life in real time. I wasn't trapped in this unresolved past that I was trying to relive or re-manipulate in some fantasy. I wasn't waiting to be happy when the future arrived with some Herculean goal. If I could do this, that's the Joe that could be happy. I have to do that first. This is insane. Totally insane. I could be happy right now, especially at step 11. I'm starting to acknowledge with dignity the harms I caused, and I'm going to do something about it, even if I'm halfway through it. Step 11 gives us relief to that and lets us feel dignity. Let's field some questions and see who's in here. I'm going to pop through some of these. Guys, if you have any questions, please direct them to Missy or I, and we could talk about steps 10 and 11. Hi, Russ. Marissa, hi. Got some people gathering in now. Hi, Chris. Hi, Suzanne. Bradley. Hope you're having an awesome Wednesday. Thank you. Checking in. Jaja. Hi, Jaja. It's been a while. Good to see you. Trevor. Hi, Trevor. Trevor was a guest. He's so calming.
Yeah.
Robert. Listen, when you were talking about a spot check inventory, this last time I had a brutal relapse. And you know what my sponsor did around step 3? He opened up to page 86, like where we could read, hey, what's up tonight? Was I selfish, crazy, yada, yada. Do I owe someone an apology? He had me read that every night around step 3. I never really kind of got that practice before, maybe. But I'll tell you what, at 40, trying to get sober, humiliated from a relapse, it helped tremendously to end my day. And I made an effort. I'd have to keep the book there or I'd forget. And I was starting able to fall asleep at night without just terror watching through my head. Did you, is that what you mean by a spot check? You just kind of, how do you practice that?
I guess for me, I can understand how that makes sense though for someone who's worked the steps before. You have the experience and knowledge of what steps 4 through 9 are already.
Yeah.
So I mean, from a sponsor's perspective, that makes sense. But I didn't start working step 10 until I got to step 10, and then she explained to me that at any point in your day, if you start feeling angry, disturbed, any of those things, you can do like a quick 10-step, like a 5-minute, like go restart, basically. Go sit somewhere privately, go write in your journal, step away remove yourself from the disturbance or whatever is causing the disturbance. And
I can relate. I was doing it at night and I was starting to do like resentments this time around, meet my sponsor once a week. And I was still getting anxious because I was in a situation. I wasn't sure how I was going to make money. My life was collapsing, but I wanted to be sober. But stresses were still right in front of my face. I'm starting. And then I put a notification on my phone, an alarm for 2:00. He said, why don't you do it twice a day? And then it was I'm like, this is how much of a crisis my mind was in. As much as I wanted to be sober, like I was terrified. Panic could wash over me at any moment. And when would that translate into an obsession that would just spin me right out? So I was doing that at 2:00. I was setting alarms. I forgot about that until you were talking. Like I never gave anyone else that advice. But I forgot that's what he told me to do. And I'm sober and I don't feel crazy. But it did work because it was keeping me conscious. I kept thinking, I'll feel better in a year, 2 years. And that could be a dangerous way to think if you're not staying in the day, especially in early sobriety. So I wasn't making new fires, new resentments. I mean, I had this baggage from the past. It's kind of unsettled, but I don't want to start picking new fights.
I think that's interesting. I was definitely taught how to do steps the very traditional way, but as a sponsor, I feel like I really like being creative and just trying to learn as much about the person as possible, and then just asking them too, how much time do you want to spend on this step, and just getting a little more creative than sitting at the big book. Because sometimes I don't feel like people engage as much just sitting at the big book. I don't know.
Well, yeah, it's tough because if you're doing it and you're dialing it in, or if I'm not, it turns into almost a literacy test, or we're reading something from 1935. And,
it's like old English.
Yeah, and we've been creative up at Lake Ariel, especially when we read Bill's story, we'll unpack it as a story about PTSD. Here's a World War I vet. Here's a guy that has his parents abandoned him. That's detachment and abandonment issues. That's not in the story. Then we see this weave of anxiety, a precondition before he drank. And guess what gave him the first relief to something that might have already existed in his mind? A torment, a trauma, a detachment, abandonment, alcohol. He says at 18, he drank it. So I think when we put that story, kind of give that context, you could see people start to listen. I can relate to that. They don't relate to this hustler stockbroker who was having hallucinations in a bed and now just decided to create what, AA? You unpack the humanity and the reality of that story through the language. It's hard, and it takes what you just said, a little creativity. What is this story? What would this story be today? What would it sound like? What words will we use?
Yeah.
Did you ever explore any other practices of meditation? What like be it from yoga, maybe sitting quiet, guided meditations? I know they were really difficult for me when I started, and I think I was trying Vipassana. It's like insight meditation. And I think I still had unresolved kind of PTSD, and it got really uncomfortable. And I know that I didn't know that, but that seems to be common. Like try something else at first, but now I could do that meditation. But I was getting uncomfortable. Like I could not ground my mind, but it was a real insight to what my mind was. It was this unbridled horse just running through a life I can't have. It was crazy. But have you explored different types of practices?
Yeah. So Vipassana is like mindfulness meditation, right?
Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah, no, I've definitely done all different types of meditation, guided, and like the Vipassana, which the ones that I've done are completely silent meditation.
Yeah.
And those are very challenging for me. If I'm going to do silent meditation, like I said before, I really prefer to be like outside in nature. So at least I have some type of stimulation to keep me, I don't know. Yeah. I think I struggle with the silent meditation because people have tried to help me with the counting, where you basically count to 10 and then go back to 1, count to 10 and then go back to 1. Focusing on your breath, focusing on each breath going in and out, to kind of try and quiet your mind. And
did you notice, were you watching the interruptions arise in the counting when you lose track of counting, like what is coming into the mind?
Yeah, you're at 20 and you're like, whoops. But trying to figure out what's interrupting. Yeah.
It's strange because there's insight there that I've been able to experience myself in the last 2 years of what thoughts am I actually choosing? And there's a lot there that really unfolds what addiction is, this crisis of having a thought and then it becomes an action without any consideration. It goes from this limbic center kind of throbbing from a fear, discomfort, security to an obsession. Now that I'm stabilized and I'm doing this kind of 11-step practice, I started to notice I'm not choosing many of my thoughts. They're just flowing through my head. And some are really bizarre and strange or mundane or whittling away at plans. I'll feel better when this plan's complete without even a consideration of that I'm having an experience of life. Yeah, that was the most profound thing I think that has happened to me from 11th step. And well, how's that translate into being sober? Well, I can feel it. When you mentioned I have a newborn, 16 months, she's in the house. And if I'm busy and really in that weird space where I'm back on autopilot, like you were describing, the cry is like an interruption to like what I'm doing. Oh, what's going on? And that's a real measurement of the life. Am I living the life I want? Is that a distraction? Or is that what I like to what was going on in my head? Like there's crying, or is this it? This is what I want. this is what I want a child. Like it's,
Mm-hmm.
there's these private thoughts. If we don't talk about them, that's where my addiction kind of grows. And meditation lets me see it without judging it.
Mm-hmm.
And now I know I'm just having a human experience. My first reaction to that human experience was an addiction. It was so uncomfortable to be me,
Mm-hmm.
this idea of self. So it sounds complex, but it's not. I think with just even 3 months of a practice, the insight that washes over you to relax within that day is profound.
Yeah, absolutely. And having children in recovery is a gift of recovery, but I've never, another way that I think of step 10 a lot is just the one day at a time step, because I feel like with the the daily inventory or the spot check inventory, like I don't when I do those things like throughout the day, I don't say spot check inventory. It just kind of it just happens, but that's the word that I would use to describe it. But after having kids, like the amount of times that I have to just like, if I want to get through the day,
Yeah.
and like you said, I want to be tuned in to what my purpose is being the best mom, because that's what is the
Yeah.
most important thing. I have to stop and pause and have those step asides, those asides with myself, those reflections that at this point have become second nature, but they aren't always. But luckily, um, I usually can feel the disconnect, the spiritual disconnect, and I need a reset, basically.
You feel it. It wakes you up from this autopilot that we all drift in and out of.
Mhm.
But I relate to that. But I heard this other story when you were talking that I relate to too. My first response in early recovery up to the first year: discomfort, uncomfortable, argument, fight, anxiety. I picked up the phone immediately. I'm calling someone,
Mhm.
and I would talk. And then I think around year 2, I started to notice sometimes I didn't have to call someone. I had a resolution through a meditation. Now, I told you I was an atheist, but I was praying the prayer of St. Francis as like a mantra, and it was
Mhm.
everything I wanted to be. I didn't want to spread fear. I want
Mhm.
to bring hope. I don't want to cause chaos. I don't want to, need to always be understood, or I'm in a panic, or should I understand others first? And that helped tremendously. And I noticed these things started to calm me, and I didn't have to desperately call a sponsor, a friend, and which after a while, after I've been practicing the steps, it almost felt selfish. Like, why don't I have the tools to solve these problems yet? And it came naturally, but it sounds like that's what was happening. Do you remember when that started happening? How long you were sober?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that was kind of that personality change, and it ebbs and flows. I mean, I've gone through a few, um, not, I don't want to even say traumatic experiences, but I've recently gone through a separation,
Yeah.
and so my life, like I said, ebbs and flows to where I have points in time where I feel new all over again, and I'm calling somebody every day, like
Yeah.
when you have those things in life, because life, life doesn't change just because we get sober. But I think really what the first time I felt that way, where I had, um, some of my confidence or like autonomy back, where it was safe for me to like use another resource other than calling my sponsor. Yeah,
Yeah.
it started happening like towards the end of my first year. And it was a cool feeling. And I can remember my sponsor telling me it was time to sponsor people. And I was like, I can't do that. Like, I don't know how to do that. Like, but yeah, right. You know, you get to a point where, you can start being of service in other ways. I remember people starting to ask me to like lead meetings, which was probably around like 9 months. And the same thought is my first thought is like, I can't do that. Like, I don't have anything to say. But yeah, so the program really, started kind of showing me, by asking me to start leading meetings, and my sponsor telling me to start sponsoring other women. There was like, I was starting to feel better, and my network was pushing me in the right direction towards, um, you know, reaching my hand out instead of always asking for help.
Yeah.
It's time for you to help other people, basically.
It kind of happens organically, or you get a little nudge that you're at step 12. And that's what we'll be talking about a little bit next week, that that's the fail safe when all else fails. And I'm glad you also said you're calling people, because, that's another thing that could happen. And it happened to me in a period of sobriety I had before this, that I got sick. I was embarrassed, like my mind, that narrative got louder, and I didn't rely on the most powerful resource I have. It's Alcoholics Anonymous, or any 12-step group. I could call people. They do care. They will listen. We're indebted to each other. We help each other. I didn't go and find newcomers. I wasn't taking people through the steps. My spiritual life just died on the vine. And it started by me not helping people first, and then too embarrassed to call someone. I'll fix this. I'll think of some solution. And it made me sick. And I'm not who I think I am sometimes when I tell myself I'm not as tough, and I don't like admitting how vulnerable I am. We need support. What a price to pay to have a beautiful life. I got to call someone. I got to help someone. Yeah, I can forget this when I'm not around people that have substance use disorder and I don't have my hand out. I'll forget it. I think we have a question. It's amazing. Good afternoon. Oh, great to see you. Thanks, Dawn. Suzanne, when you're meditating and you get distracted by a thought, which one do you focus on? Thought, or just go back into meditating? You want to tackle that one, Melissa?
Yeah, I mean, with silent meditation, the two most common things that people suggest for me have been to count to 10 in my head, and then when I get to 10, start back to 1. So 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, like keep doing it in a loop over and over again. And the other thing that's been helpful is just to focus on my breathing. So literally feeling my breath go in and then feeling my breath come out. It sounds very strange, but just being very, very conscious and aware of how I'm breathing. Those are the two that I recommended the most. Or, I mean, you can try guided meditation too, if that's something that you'd be interested in doing. There's a lot of free stuff on the internet these days. I use Insight Timer. Guided meditation is a good way to just start getting comfortable with it. And sometimes in the guided meditations, they will have even like a 2 or 3 minute silent period. So you can just kind of start dipping your toe into it, I guess. But I'm not really good at silent meditation, and I'm probably not the best person to ask either.
Yeah, if anyone, I have a list on 11 step that we use, and I'll email to anyone who's looking for at least suggestions. And it's a list of books, apps for guided meditations, introductory courses from Insight, Melissa shared, Headspace, Calm. Sam Harris has an app called Waking Up. It has a lot of introductory courses to multiple practices, using koans, breathing. And that's my basic intro to meditation. To have the controlled idea of presence is what Melissa was saying, is breathing. And it's like we don't choose to breathe. It's the same thing as like you don't choose for your hair to grow long throughout the evening while you're sleeping. There's a lot of these processes that still are me, even though I have no control over them. And breathing's one of them. And to get in touch with the breathing with a count really starts to shut some noise down. And it could be loud at first in your head. and you can let thoughts go by. The first practice of doing that can be what Melissa said, is counting. And what keeps breaking the counting? Don't judge it. There's nothing to achieve. You're not going to get a medal. You're just seeing, you're having an insight. Can I get to know what I'm calling me? This is my mind. This is the state of my mind. And it's a great time to practice it after you cleared the deck of maybe years of havoc, pain, trauma, harms. We're starting to see some resolution to it by step 10, or a plan to resolve it. And to now, who am I going to be? Because maybe I don't have experience yet being the person I want to be. And we met that in step 6 in our first hour of meditation, to reflect on what did we just do? And that was the case for me, and it continues to be the case, so I don't fall asleep. Because life, you know, it could be painful. And when I get uncomfortable, I fall asleep. I retreat. Before I've ever relapsed, I retreat somewhere in here that I don't seem to be reached. You can't reach me. And if I do that long enough, of course that mind's going to start getting curious about drinking or relapsing. I'm living in torment. And these steps keep me away from that. 10, 11, and 12. We'll see. Let's check for some more questions. Yeah. Oh, Jiminy Crickets. Akiva, I did it again. Melissa, I put my email up there maybe once every 3 weeks, and I put the wrong email. Yeah, don't worry. Just email me. I'll give you a hand. Thank you, Akiva. So wrapping up, Melissa, you've been working at Avenues. You had a great sponsor that guided you through the steps. Do you feel that obligation now to always have your hand out for people? I mean, you just see it in your work, your reflection in your work, but what is step 10, 11, and basically 12? Have they kept you sane?
Yes, absolutely. I'm just really lucky that I have some type of structure in my life in this way. Definitely because I don't go to church, obviously. Yeah, I am an alcoholic. And like I was talking about at the beginning, I have this like agnosticism built into my personality. So to have, a step guide or a program to be able to fall back on, especially, when going through life, having children, relationships ending, relationships starting, just navigating life in general, life is hard and shit comes up, and I'm just, yeah, steps 10 and 11 are definitely what I focus on in my life a lot. I do sponsor women, and I'm always willing to take on a new sponsee. But yeah, that's probably one of the coolest parts too, is to just be there to listen to somebody who's new.
Yeah. We have one more question. I think we have time to. What if you have ADHD and find it difficult to stop the thoughts and can't seem to meditate because you can't stop thinking so much? Thank you, Penny. I have ADHD. And some suggestions for an intro to meditation sometimes is to get physical with it. And Melissa mentioned a practice earlier that I enjoy, walking. A walking meditation. And that could be just to do a body hack and start moving the body. Introductory yoga classes could start that. And maybe if you practice physical movement throughout this meditation, eventually it can evolve into a practice that could be sitting and quieting the thoughts. But each person has their own individual path. Before I end, I was just going to show you, these are, there's great suggestions in Refuge Recovery. They have some practices to start for newcomers, and Recovery Dharma. If anyone's ever interested, they're worth a read. It doesn't mean you have to join or do any of that. To search online, other people practicing meditation together online. It's a great support. It's helped me in the past tremendously. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight and remind you, if you want to start with simple intentions and meditations and prayers, please visit our Facebook for daily hammock readings, 1 to 3 minute videos every morning. It's a great way to start the day with an intention and a thought that keeps you focused on recovery. Missy, thanks a lot, and congratulations today on the opening of the new facility in Maryland. That's exciting. And we'll see you soon. You'll have to come around next round. That was great.
Yeah.
Guys,
Thanks.
stay safe, be sober, and we'll see you next week.